Good evening, folks. Welcome to an Oz Cyclone Chase update. Tonight, 26th of February 2013. Tonight, we're going to look at Tropical Cyclone Rusty, but before we do that, we're going to have a quick look at the upcoming activity over the Gulf of Carpentaria and Coral Sea. So, sometime mid to late next week, we expect conditions to become quite active in the Gulf of Carpentaria and the Coral Sea. Looking at the upper level winds at the time, the upper level winds should push anything that happens in the Gulf towards the southeast or the east-southeast. But in the Coral Sea, it gets a little bit trickier and we're not quite sure. Overall, we're suggesting a push towards the east-southeast as well. But it's a little bit more, it's a little bit trickier, especially if the low pressure system in the Coral Sea develops a bit closer to the coastline. So once again, we're not looking at this until at least mid to late next week. The other issue is that by late next week, we might also be looking at a new tropical low or cyclone forming off the Kimberley coastline, as well as a tropical cyclone in the Coral Sea. So we could be looking at two or twin systems here, and where they go at this stage, way too early to say. Alright folks, so that's all we're going to do in terms of a look ahead that far, but let's get into Tropical Cyclone Rusty now, because I know we've got a lot of viewers that want to know what's going on there. Courtesy of Weather Zone, the last few hours of this cyclone, it really has done nothing. It has done nothing even remotely looking like moving in any direction whatsoever. It's just teetering and not knowing which way it wants to go. There's nothing to shove it in any particular way whatsoever. There's nothing to shove it towards the east. There's nothing to shove it towards the west or the south. And if we look here, you can see the system just remaining off the coast of Port Hedland. Port Hedland's still outside of the area of maximum winds, so really at this stage only receiving Category 1 and 2 type winds. But as the system pushes closer to the coast, and assuming it doesn't push southeast from there, but assuming it pushes more towards the south or the southwest, we would see conditions worsen in Port Hedland a lot over the next 24 hours. Look, at this stage, there was talk from the DFES that we could be looking at red alert in Port Hedland for almost up to pretty well Thursday. So, really, folks, you're in shelter now, I hope, and you're going to be probably unable to move from where you are now for a number of hours, probably 24 to 36 hours from now, before they lift that red alert. As Karratha goes, Karratha's going to be remaining on blue at this point in time. However, we have heard that they're reassessing the situation tonight, 8 PM Western Standard Time. That's straight from the DFES. So there was talk that Karratha would go on yellow. But look, at this stage, as I'll show you, the model guidance has shifted this a little bit further to the east. So crossing either around Port Hedland or to the east of Port Hedland. And with that being the case, it may not be necessary to put Karratha on a yellow alert, but obviously we don't make those decisions, the DFES does, and they will reassess 8 PM tonight. So for those, we've had countless, and I really do mean countless, questions about Karratha, about going on to yellow alert. We really can't tell you. All we can say is the DFES is meeting again at 8 PM tonight Western Time. And at this stage, according to model guidance, there may not be a necessity to put Karratha on yellow alert. Barrow Island's another one we've had to answer probably over 100 times over the past 24 hours. So let me assure you, Barrow Island, you are not going to cop anywhere near the worst of this. You might cop some gusty winds and a few showers. Nothing much more than that, though. Hopefully that clears a lot of the questions up for those particular regions. Alright, now let's get into having a closer look at Rusty. Taking a look, the radar imagery showed how large the eye is, but the visible satellite, the in-depth, close-up visible satellite imagery can show it as well, how big and large this eye is. Look, because the eye is so large, it makes it difficult for the system to intensify as rapidly as maybe some of the modelling was showing. However, most of the modelling continues, except for the GFS, to tighten the system as it heads towards land. Now, as the system tightens, the eye tightens up, the chance for centralized convection increases, and so we should see the system intensify as it heads towards land, at least into Category 4, mid Category 4 to high Category 4. Some of the modelling still predicts, is very stubborn from the European particularly, still predicts a Category 5, low-end Category 5 on impact. So, this system here, you can just see the eye here. We're just seeing a little bit of a clearance there. There is still some fairly wispy cloud there where the eye is supposed to be, so it's not completely clear, and we don't expect it to be completely clear in a Cat 3 system. However, if the system does tighten up, we should see a very, very nice little pinhole eye develop as the system crosses the coast. So that will be very interesting to see if it happens. And once again, if we look at the natural colour imagery, we can see the eye right here, very, very large looking eye. Not completely clear, but as I say, don't expect it to be at this intensity. However, as it tightens up and as it intensifies, we might actually see a clear eye. Looking at how much moisture is in the atmosphere, absolutely no problems with moisture. The system is in a very moist environment. That dry air that was wrapping around this morning just simply cannot get a look in. The actual circulation itself is under a completely moist environment, so there's absolutely no chance of this system dying on its approach to the coast. So where exactly are the strongest winds of the system? Now, we've had a lot of people from Headland saying, it's not too bad, it's not too bad. Well, yes, it's not too bad, not yet anyway. You're still a fair way from the maximum winds. Now, the maximum winds, the eye is here, right? And the eye is very large. But the maximum winds then only extend a little way from the eye. So even though the eye is about 80 kilometres across, and inside that eye we're seeing fairly light winds, but just outside that eye, and this section's only about 20 or 30 kilometres further out from the eye, we see some extreme winds of over 65 knots. So really, even though the eye is very large, the area of extreme winds around the eye is not very large. And look, as the eye starts to tighten up, we will see those winds, that area of maximum winds, still remain very tight to that eye, but intensify. Look, overall though, you're looking at gale force winds a long way from the centre, particularly in the eastern, as we said yesterday, particularly in the northern and eastern quadrants. We're seeing a long way, gales a long way. Look, even further to the north, as you head towards Broome, you're still looking at a very, very large gale radius associated more so with the monsoon trough as well. So the monsoon trough is very active up there too. So that's the wind field of this particular system. If we take a bit of a closer look at that wind field, an in-depth zoomed in image, you can see still that this area of maximum winds is still off the coast, well and truly off the coast in fact. So the actual mainland has not really seen anything yet. We've only seen 35 to 50 knot winds sustained, and that's pretty well what the OBS data has been showing us, that Port Hedland hasn't really got too many readings above 110 kilometres an hour. So, and that, as you can see clearly here, is because Port Hedland is still not in the area of maximum winds. Now, until the system starts to adopt a southward track, and we do expect that to happen, Port Hedland is going to be outside of those very intense winds until the system starts to push towards the south. We don't expect that to happen until tomorrow. So looking at where this system lies in relation to wind shear values, here's the system here to the north of Hedland, or north-northeast of Hedland. Look, it's lying in an almost perfect spot for further development and further intensification. I guess the only thing it's lacking is an upper level anticyclone, which seems to be out here well east of the system. Had that been right above it, we could be seeing the system just completely bomb out. But overall, wind shear, very good. We saw that moisture levels are very good. The system will continue to intensify, and if it can tighten up that eye feature, we should see rapid intensification if it can remain off the coast while it tightens up its eye feature. If the eye stays fairly large like it is now, the intensification will be a lot slower, and so we might only see a low-end Cat 4 cross the coast. If it can tighten up, we're starting to talk more into the high-end Category 4 system. Possibly, as I say, a couple of the models, even Category 5, very low Category 5. Alright, well, we're starting to get a little bit more agreement between the model guidance now as to where it's going to go. And overall, the news, pretty good for Port Hedland, because all of the track guidance that we've got access to at the moment suggests that the system will cross to the east of Port Hedland. That westerly shift that was just starting up around lunchtime really didn't make it go anywhere. That ridge really hasn't formed properly, and so we haven't got that westerly movement that we said we might get. We've really just got a bit of a stall where there's just nothing taking this anywhere, and so because of that, the system expected to remain very slow moving for the next 12 hours and then adopt a south to southeast or south-southeast pattern according to most of the guidance that we've got access to here. So we've got the UK Met continues, as I say, very stubborn model, continues to push it out to the southeast. The NOGAPS model now, instead of pushing it directly south, pushes it southeast, but as I say, the NOGAPS model, not very good. It's being phased out, so we might even discard that. The CMC model has a bit of a two-way bet. It sort of pushes it southeast and then directly south. And the GFS model, which has it meandering about for at least another day or so before, for at least another 12 hours or so before crossing the coast tomorrow, and then pushing towards the south or south-southwest. Let's have a look at the Euro in a bit more detail. Just before I show you that, I just wanted to show how the system has been slowly intensifying through the day. So by about 7:30 a.m. Western time, it was about 972.4 hectopascals. Since then, it's dropped about 9 hectopascals. So at 7:30 Queensland time, so 5:30 p.m. WA time, later satellite analysis had the system at 963.2 and continuing to intensify. These are intensity values, so 4.3, 4.8. I'm not going to go into the scientific aspect of them, but needless to say, if these numbers continue to rise, the system gets stronger. If these numbers fall, the system gets weaker. So overall, we're seeing an overall strengthening of the system as the day has progressed. So we've started at 4.2, 4.3, gone to 4.8, and our pressures dropped from about 972 to 963. These are unofficial values. The other thing that we look for is some very cold cloud tops near the center, and that's what we're getting. We're getting negative 70, negative 80 degrees cloud tops near the center of the system. When we get those sort of cloud tops, we know we're in business for an intensifying tropical cyclone. So very, very clear guidance on that through satellite analysis over the last 12 hours. So just having a quick look at the GFS ensemble data, and we can see that overall the GFS model does have a coastal crossing, most likely to the east of Port Hedland, so it's going to be a very close call. But look folks, the big key here is as long as the cyclone crosses east of Port Hedland, yes, you're going to cop a barrage of wind, yes, you're going to cop a fair bit of rain, but no, you're not going to cop a massive storm surge, which is absolutely critical in these sort of very large, slow-moving systems. If these outlying GFS models come out and it does cross over the top, or even to the west, I should say, of the system of Port Hedland, then you will cop a storm surge, and the storm surge is going to be big with this system. So hopefully, all things going well, and fingers crossed that the model data is accurate this time, and we are seeing a lot of agreement now. The system will cross just to the east of Hedland and therefore not give Port Hedland that terrible storm surge that could happen should the system push a little bit more westward. So overall, as I say, the GFS ensemble keeps it east. Let's have an in-depth look with the Euro now. Courtesy of Weather Underground, we see that the Euro high resolution model by 7 p.m. Queensland time, 5 p.m. WA time, does have the system eye starting to tighten up a little bit compared to what we've seen. A much tighter eye means a lot more chance of intensification a lot faster. We're going to zoom right in now to the Hedland region, because this area is the area that's going to cop the most wind, this area between Hedland to Pardue to Wallal. And so if we continue tracking this system through to early tomorrow morning, this is at 2 a.m. Western time, we see that it really does appear to be intensifying, and the eye still reasonably large, though hasn't completely tightened up. By 8 a.m. tomorrow, we continue to see this eye here, but we see, look at this intensity of this system. These purple winds are hurricane force. The dark purple here, the brighter purple here, 75 knots plus. They're category 3 sustained wind speeds, folks. So really, really intense tropical cyclone there. And as we continue tracking the system through to Wednesday, it's not until Wednesday afternoon that it finally decides to jut through and cross the coast to the east of Hedland by around about 50 to 80 kilometres. Now, should that happen, Port Hedland would be spared the worst of the wind conditions. You would be on the outskirts of that purple. So if you look where Port Hedland is, you start to get it early tomorrow morning. You start to get an increase in winds, but really they don't increase to the level that you would expect should the eye come anywhere closer. If the eye comes anywhere closer, we're talking disastrous Cat 4 winds. At this stage, where Hedland looks to be remaining, we're talking probably Cat 3 gusts at this point in time. But look folks, it's all dependent, 10-20 k's further to the west and Hedland straight back into it again. And now let's take a look at the rainfall over the next 24 hours or so. Looking to 11 p.m. tonight, Western time, and we've got really intense rainfall surrounding the eye, and we can see that really well on radar already. So this is just the model confirming what we're already seeing on the ground. So the near-term prediction of the European model is extremely good. It's usually better than a lot of the other models. So when we're only looking out to 24 hours or so, it's a very good model to use for rainfall. And we continue to see the heaviest rain on the western semicircle of the system early tomorrow. 5 a.m. Western tomorrow. By 8 a.m. Western tomorrow, we continue to see the western semicircle really being extremely heavy rainfall. Once again, just missing Headland, and that's on the basis, remember, that this tropical cyclone remains well to the northeast as opposed to pushing closer to Headland. Obviously, if the cyclone moves a little bit further to the west, then Headland is right into that that red pinkish purplish colour here, which suggests over 100 millimeters of rain in 6 hours. If that happens, extremely dangerous flooding situation could arise. Now don't forget, there are river catchments here between Headland and Pardue, so they are likely to get inundated as the system continues. Now you can see overall Headland missing the worst of this based on the latest model guidance from the European, but as I said, it's still dependent because really it's nothing steering it at the moment, and the model's assuming that something will come along eventually tomorrow morning and start to push it to the southeast in a lot more, or not a lot more, but a little more strength to it. And so by doing that, it continues to keep the rain fairly well east of Headland. Obviously areas like Karratha, not expecting too much, and as we head even further to Barrow Island, I can't even put it on the map, it's that far out of this picture, so there's no real threat to those regions at this point in time, assuming that the cyclone of course takes this track, and that's a big assumption, because as I say, there is still a lot of model guidance that pushes it a bit further towards Headland, but nothing really that now pushes it too far to the west of Headland, which is great news storm surge wise. Alright, now if we continue just tracking this system inland a little, we see that it does get a little bit of a move on once it does go inland, but it also weakens out pretty rapidly. So by Thursday morning, we're down to about a Category 2 system, and then as we head towards Thursday afternoon, we're down to a Category 1 type system as it heads near Newman. And if we look at the wind field, by the time it gets down that far, we're not really talking a significant tropical cyclone. We're talking about a rainstorm with some gales in it, really. Still looking, as I say, Cat 2 on its approach to Newman, but as it gets anywhere near it, it does look like it's going to be just a rainstorm with some fairly gusty winds. Alright folks, so that's the latest on TC Rusty. So once again, you're in for a big long 24 hours. The model guidance, however, is very positive if you live in Port Hedland. This could be a very close shave. It's still too tight to call though, so don't bank on it, don't put your house on it. So stay alert, stay indoors, adhere to all the red alerts that are being issued and what you need to do for red alerts. Stay listening to the bomb.gov.au/cyclone for all the latest cyclone advices. But as I say, model guidance at the moment is quite positive in the system being slightly east of Headland, which is great news, especially regarding the storm surge. Before all that fun and craziness starts to happen in the Coral Sea late next week, just wanted to draw your attention to a very weak low off the coast of Bowen, off the Queensland coast here. Not expected to do much, but still interesting just the same, and the fact that it's just meandering about between Bowen and Townsville is interesting enough for us all. But look, conditions at the time are not conducive here for further development. If we have a look at things like wind shear around Bowen, not great. They get not too bad around Townsville, but then we also have a look at humidity levels. We've got a lot of dry air surrounding the system. Remember, cyclones will only form, or low pressure systems will only further deepen in the blue and dark blue and light blue regions here of high humidity. You can see off the coast of Bowen, we don't have the humidity level. We've got a lot of dry air off the coast of North Queensland. So look folks, we don't expect anything much to happen out of that tropical low, or very weak circulation that's there at the moment. We expect that to wash out. We also have another circulation further to the east that won't affect the Queensland Queensland coast at any time in the future by the looks of things either. We just have one final look to do over to Sandy's little sister, Rusty's little sister. And you can see it here near the Cocos Islands. With the Cocos Islands have had some amazing amounts of rainfall, over 800 millimetres I've heard this week on the islands. So extreme rainfall there, according to or due to this low pressure area and associated monsoonal trough. We can see that the system slowly deepens, or slightly deepens, I should say, but really doesn't do much in terms of movement here until we fast forward through a few days, and it just starts to get a very, very slow move to the east. Eventually should start to move a little bit more rapidly towards the east or the southeast. But really, folks, there's not much development being progged for this system according to model guidance at the moment. So the fact it's there, we do need to watch it. But look, even at the 5-day period this weekend, we're still, we're just starting to see the edge of the WA coast, and this is where it is here. I'd be very surprised if this ended up posing a threat. But look, it's there, and it is a circulation, and it does need to be watched as it pushes to the east come this weekend or early into next week. As I say, late next week we're looking at 2 possible lows, or maybe even 3 possible lows. The big one of interest is the one in the Coral Sea, but there is some model data that suggests that we might see another low off the northwest coast, particularly off the North Kimberley coastline late next week. But really the Coral Sea becomes our focus late next week. Alright, thanks very much for watching this one. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.